What says private paramilitary organization means any group of three or more persons associated under a command structure for the purpose of functioning in public or training to function in public as a combat support, law enforcement, or security service unit.
What?
Right.
So something else we need to talk about is here in Oregon, they just passed something called HB 2572. Okay, I think that's an S. That's supposed to be a 2. But HB 2572, and we need to talk about how that can impact private security. Now, what blew my mind is that this is something that here in Oregon, we were fighting over the last 2 years. It's basically called a anti-paramilitary bill. And the thought process behind it is basically that when we had the Antifa protest in 2020, all across the country, you saw people taking up arms, protesting the riots that were going on. You saw people going to courthouses during COVID, fully dressed in their kits and carrying their firearms and talking about the lockdowns, things of that nature. And most of the people that were involved in the display, the performative display of walking around with their firearms, were on what you would call the political right. Okay?
Right.
So here in Oregon, the political left have passed this bill which states that you cannot in any way, in concert of 2 or more people, do anything to dissuade the rights of the people that are protesting. This is basically set up to protect Antifa. If Antifa is marching through your neighborhood, which I witnessed firsthand working security for executive protection for the news organizations during the riots, if they're marching in your neighborhood and you and a neighbor get firearms and stand out in front of your house to protect your home, you are in concert with another person with a firearm, and they are considering that paramilitary. Now, where this thing gets really off the rails and why I'm bringing it up is that we here in Oregon had to legally fight to get a carve-out exception for security. I apologize for not having the House bill up right now. I had it and it's not loading.
Well, it says right here. It says right here, and I'm just Googling. You tell me if that's right or not. It says creates right of action for person injured by paramilitary activity. Authority authorizes Attorney General to bring civil action for injunctive relief against paramilitary activity and authorizes use by the Attorney General of investigative demand during investigation into preliminary activity.
Now scroll down and look at the part where it talks about private security. There was a writing. Now, if you're on the Oregon bill that's already passed, they might have taken that out because we fought for an exception. It said that anyone carrying a firearm, 2 or more people providing security, if you were involved in anything that a person could sense that they were being intimidated, they could bring this against you. The Attorney General could bring this against you as a security entity.
What says private paramilitary organization means any group of 3 or more persons associated under a command structure for the purpose of functioning in public or training to function in public as a combat support, law enforcement, or security service unit.
What? See that?
What the heck?
You see that?
Private military, they're saying private military is law enforcement and security service?
Yep. So that is how the bill was written. We were able to get a carve out for security while you're working under the direction of the state. So if you're working as a private security contractor under contract, under your, here in Oregon, that would be DPSST. I know it's BSIS in California, some other things in other places. If you're working in conjunction with a contract and performing your duty as an officer of the state, you're fine. But we had to fight for that because originally the way that it is written is the way that it was going to be interpreted. So, if we are working at my location where I work, we have anywhere from 3 to 4 officers at one time, all armed. Where I work also is a known location for protest. So we're approaching the 2024 election. Let's just say that it looks like Donald Trump is going to win. The people here in Portland would start to protest, right? As they're protesting, our building that I primarily service is all glass. So that's a prime location for people to come and try and damage or destroy. If the 3 to 4 of our security officers were to engage in any sort of action where the protesters could viably articulate that we were putting them in fear of their constitutional right to protest, then the Attorney General could come after us for this paramilitary action. Now, most people say, well, that's absurd. Well, that's assuming that you're not me, who is a very vocal Second Amendment advocate, who has sued the governor of the state, who has sued the Attorney General of the state for our Second Amendment rights under Measure 114. I'm involved in the federal lawsuit. So imagine the situation if I were to be involved in something like that with this paramilitary bill as it stands, if it didn't have that private security carve out. Now, people that are doing firearms training, people that are doing, training or tactics, all of that, it gives a very wide breadth to the Attorney General to make that decision.
We're talking about on here. It says members of an organization that is authorized under state or federal law to provide paramilitary, law enforcement, or security service training, or to engage in paramilitary activity or the provision of law enforcement or security service when performing the functions authorized by law in the case of paramilitary activity and law enforcement services when under the direct and control of the government authority. So that's basically the section that takes security services out of it. As long as you're working under a licensed security company through the state, correct?
And we had to fight for that. Because listen, this was going to go through without anybody knowing. I work with an organization that watches for things like this, and they were able to catch it, and we were able to get in and get that card.
Let me ask you this: did they have law enforcement already on here, or did they have to put law enforcement in there?
No,
also,
they had police on there.
Oh, so they did have law enforcement. They just didn't have security.
Yeah.
That's wow.
That's wild, isn't it?
That's crazy.
That's crazy. But. So hey, this is what blew my mind. So I see this over the past year and I'm thinking that it's crazy. And then I'm scrolling through YouTube and somebody said that, I don't know if it was Illinois or if it was Massachusetts, but another state is implementing this exact same bill. It's copy and paste. And I put on there, I said, hey, this just went through in Oregon. And they were like, what? I was like, yeah, this is copy and paste. So you're seeing a lot of these gun control bills that are just being, pushed in one state after another. But people need to be aware of this. If you're working security, you need to be aware of this type of bill, this paramilitary bill. Watch for that during your legislative session, because if they don't carve out for private security and you guys are working in private security, you can find yourself getting jammed up. And they give the Attorney General a very wide reach in terms of what they consider you being involved in paramilitary. If you're out with 3 or 4 people that and you guys are in kit and you're running drills and you're shooting targets and you're posting that to YouTube, and then you have some very anti left wing or democratic type stuff on your Facebook page, be very careful. Like I've been telling people, it's not a joke. They're doing this for a reason, so you got to be careful with that.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Don't Antifa, don't they dress up like that?
Yeah. But they're not doing it for them. They're not doing it for them.
Right. That's people that are. So basically, they're not basically saying that if you dress up like that, it's against the law. They're saying if you dress up like that and stop somebody from protesting or anything like that, that's what they're going after, right?
They want to make sure that anyone who wants to stop people from marching, protesting, or doing any of these types of activities that have happened in Portland historically, that they have a clear path to do it.
But what if the protesters are dressed up like a private paramilitary organization?
If the Proud Boys were to walk through downtown doing what they normally do, they would probably get hit with this. If Antifa were to walk through downtown and the Proud Boys were to station on the side of the street in opposition to Antifa, they would also still get hit with this. It's not going to go towards the left. It's going to go to the right without getting overly political.
Wow. Without getting overly political, right?
I try my best.